Emerson's Nature, Chapter 6, Idealism.
The definition of idealism is the perception that the mind creates the nature and the material things we perceive around us.
God fills our mind with the power to think, to dream, to imagine. That God will teach a human mind and so makes it the receiver of a certain number of congruent sensations, which we call the sun and moon, man and woman, house and trade. It is said the frivolous make themselves merry with the ideal theory, that we can only know ideas in the mind and not truly perceive them in reality. But that is the frivolous, the unimportant. The majority need to realize that the mind and nature are connected, that the ideal theory does not affect the stability of nature, because no matter how much the world changes, nature stays the same, and therefore the mind stays the same. We are rooted in nature through our mind. The wheels and springs of man are all set to hypotheses of the permanence of nature. We are not built like ships to be tossed, but like a house to stand. When considering the question of the mind, it's important to consider that there are vast expanses of untapped potential in the mind, and so too are there in nature. It says, but whilst we acquiesce entirely in the permanence of natural laws, the question of absolute existence of nature still remains open.
Culture has a uniform effect on the human mind. It doesn't shake our knowledge of it, but it leads us to regard nature as a phenomenon. There are 5 effects of culture. First is motion, second is poetry, third is physical science, fourth is intellectual science, and fifth is religion and ethics.
Expanding upon the first effect of culture, hints that nature, in fact, creates our minds. Our minds, in effect, come from nature. Our first institution, meaning the effect of culture, in the ideal philosophy is a hint from nature, in nature herself. Nature is made to conspire with spirit to emancipate us, so, in effect, to free us. But the least change in our point of view gives the whole world, a pictorial air. So the slightest change in our point of view can give us an entirely different perspective of the world. In continuation of her first point, it concerns visual changes caused by our physical change with the way we interact with our environment. These changes and distortions emphasize the separation between ourselves and nature, separation that produces wonder and provides us with a sense of our own stability. Am I supposed to go through?
Yes, come by.
In his second effect on culture, Emerson describes the poet. The poet is described as the most ideal, with the ability to manipulate nature. To him, the refractory world is docile and flexible. He invests dust and stones with humanity and makes them the words of reason. So, in a sense, he's able to manipulate and shape what he sees in the world.
Shakespeare is the best example because he possesses that power, and Emerson uses the example of the tempest, and the tempest provides the metaphor of time, which Shakespeare reveals to us. But time to us is non-inanimate, and time is just the hours of the day to us.
As As I find myself amongst the midst of these plants indigenous to Fairfield, Connecticut, it can only remind me of nature, and naturally, Emma Waldo's nature in regards to idealism. So, expanding upon his third point, he now discusses the differences between the poet, the philosopher, and the scientist, the poet being more concerned with beauty, and the philosopher with truth. The poet injects his personality into nature through his thoughts, conveyed through the mind, as that's our main focus of this section, which is mostly conveyed through his poetry. And the philosopher is more likely to be contemplating his thoughts in reality and discarding nature's objects from which his ideas were originally gained. In contrast, scientists, and especially mathematicians, are going to rely on the more abstract reasoning rather than logical thought and physical observations. He that has never doubted the existence of matter may be assured that he has no aptitude for metaphysical inquiries.
The final cultural effect on the human mind is religion and ethics. They are the practice of ideas or the introduction of ideas into life. Religion and ethics degrade nature and suggest dependence on the spirit. Ethics is the system of human duties commencing from man, and religion is the human duties, but God gave it to us. The first and last lesson of religion is the things that are seen are temporal, the things that are unseen are eternal. The uniform language that may be heard in the churches of the most ignorant sects is contemn the unsubstantial shows of the world. There are vanities, dreams, shadows, and unrealities, and seek only the realities of religion.